What happens when a woman who gave up everything for love discovers that love was a lie? This isn't just a story of heartbreak. It's a story of chilling betrayal and masterful revenge. For months, Era Vance believed she was living a fairy tale. Pregnant with the child of charming tech millionaire Julian Croft. But while Julian was sleeping in the arms of his mistress, he was also plotting to cast his pregnant wife aside with nothing. He underestimated her. He forgot who she was before she met him. And in one single, silent night, while he dreamt of his future, she took hers back, draining every dollar from his empire and vanishing into thin air. This is the story of how she did it. The silence in the house was the most expensive thing Julian Croft owned. It was a deep, velvety silence purchased with triple-paned acoustic glass. Acres of secluded woodland in the hills above San Francisco. And a staff that moved with the ghostly quiet of shadows. For Era Vance, now Croft, that silence had once felt like peace. For the past 3 years, it had been her sanctuary. Now, it felt like a tomb. She stood in the center of their cavernous walk-in closet. A space larger than her first apartment in the city. Racks of Julian's custom-tailored Tom Ford and Brioni suits stood like a disciplined army on one side. Her own wardrobe, a vibrant collection of couture he'd curated for her, faced his in a riot of color and silk. He called her his exotic bird. And this was her golden cage, lined with Dior and Chanel. Era ran a hand over her belly, where the slight, firm curve of her 5-month pregnancy was now undeniable. This child, their son, was supposed to be the final, perfect piece of their perfect life, the heir to the Croft tech dynasty. But the joy she'd felt during the first trimester had curdled into a cold, hard knot of dread in her stomach. The betrayal hadn't been a sudden, shattering event. It was a slow poison, seeping into the foundations of their marriage. It began with the little things, the late nights at the office that stretched into sunrises. The business trips to Singapore and Zurich that left him smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers, a faint, cloying scent of jasmine and sandalwood. It was in the way he angled his phone away from her. A screen that had once been an open book, now a dark, reflective secret. Julian was a creature of habit and immense arrogance. It was this combination that became his undoing. He believed he was too smart to be caught. And that Era was too docile, too in love to ever suspect him. He was wrong on both counts. The first real crack in the facade appeared a month ago. He'd left his secondary phone, the one he claimed was for international business, charging on the nightstand. An almost laughably amateur mistake. At 2 a.m. As Era lay awake wrestling with pregnancy-induced insomnia, it lit up. Not with a call or a text, but a calendar notification. Sienna. DST. Regis. 9 p.m. Don't be late. Sienna. The name was elegant, exotic. It sounded expensive, just like everything else in Julian's life. Era's heart had hammered against her ribs. A frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence. Her first instinct was to confront him. To scream. To shatter the placid surface of their lives. But a deeper, colder instinct took over, an instinct she thought she'd buried long ago. From a life before Julian. Before she was Era Croft. Society wife. She was Era Vance. A forensic accountant for a top firm in New York. Her job had been to follow the money. To find the rot hidden beneath layers of complex transactions and corporate lies. She was a hunter of financial predators. She'd given it all up for Julian. Believing she'd found a love that made her old life of suspicion and numbers seem gray and meaningless. Now, she realized she hadn't given it up. She had merely been dormant. That night, she didn't sleep. She slipped out of bed and went to her home office. A sterile white space that she rarely used. She turned on her encrypted laptop and began to dig. She started not with his phone, but with his money. Money never lied. Julian's finances were a labyrinth of shell corporations, offshore holding companies, and blind trusts. All designed to minimize taxes and maximize secrecy. To any normal person, it would be impenetrable. To Era, it was a language she spoke fluently. She still had access to the master accounts, a sign of his ultimate arrogance. He'd given her access as a grand romantic gesture when they married. A symbol of their partnership. Never imagining she possessed the skill to truly comprehend, let alone navigate, the system. 4 weeks. She spent her nights mapping his empire. While he slept. Or while he was out at his business dinners. She was a ghost in the machine. Tracing wire transfers. Analyzing credit card statements. And cross-referencing expense reports. And there she was, Sienna Dubois. A name that appeared again and again. A penthouse apartment in a new development downtown. Paid for by a shell corporation linked to Julian. A black Amex card. A supplementary on an account Era had never seen. Racking up charges at designer boutiques and 5-star hotels around the world. Flights that mirrored Julian's own travel schedule. But in first class. 1 row behind him. He wasn't just having an affair. He was funding a parallel life. The pain was immense. A physical blow that left her breathless. But the forensic accountant in her was dispassionate. Pain was data. It fueled her. The sheer scale of the deception was breathtaking. It wasn't just the money. It was the meticulous planning. The years of lies that underpinned every "I love you." Every tender touch. But the catalyst. The event that turned her from a woman betrayed into an avenging angel. Came last Tuesday. Julian was on a conference call in his home office. The heavy oak doors were shut. He thought they were soundproof. They were not. Era was walking past on her way to the kitchen when she heard his voice. Low and sharp. He wasn't talking about algorithms or stock prices. He was talking about her. The prenup is ironclad. Marcus. He was saying. His voice stripped of all its usual charm. She recognized the name, Marcus Thorne. Julian's notoriously ruthless attorney. But the pregnancy complicates things. The optics are terrible. Era froze. Her hand flat against the wall. Her blood turning to ice. We can't have a messy, public divorce. Julian continued. His tone like flint. Not with the IPO next year. I need to control the narrative. We'll build a case. Unstable. Hormonal. Emotionally erratic. We can get a psych evaluation ordered. We'll prove she's an unfit mother. An unfit mother. The word struck her with the force of a physical assault. He was going to take her son. And the settlement? Marcus's voice was a tinny rasp over the speakerphone. The prenup gives her a one-time payout of $1 million. A pittance. An insult. She'll fight it. Of course. But once we have the leverage of the child, she'll fold. She'll take the deal and disappear. She can see the boy on supervised visits. Twice a year. If she behaves. Era had to clamp her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. It wasn't a sob of sadness. It was a sob of pure, unadulterated rage. He wasn't just going to leave her. He was going to erase her. Paint her as a lunatic. And steal the only thing in the world that now mattered. He was going to use their child as a weapon to destroy her. In that moment, standing in the cold, silent hallway of her gilded cage, the heartbroken wife died. And the forensic accountant was reborn. Armed with a mother's fury. He wanted to leave her with nothing. She would leave him with less. She backed away from the door silently. Her mind a maelstrom of calculations. This was no longer about a broken heart. This was war. And she would not lose. She went to her office and locked the door. She pulled up the financial maps she had created. The labyrinth of his wealth. She saw the load-bearing walls. The critical junctions. The keystones that held the entire arch of his fortune together. And she began to draft a plan. Not a plan for divorce. But a plan for demolition. She needed an ally. Someone she could trust implicitly. Someone with a skill set that complemented her own. She picked up her burner phone, a simple, untraceable device she'd bought with cash weeks ago, and typed a single message to the only number saved in it, her brother. Liam Vance. Liam was the black sheep of their family. A cybersecurity genius who lived in a messy apartment in Oakland and worked as a white-hat hacker for a boutique security firm. He saw the world in lines of code and firewalls. He'd always despised Julian, calling him a charismatic sociopath from the day they met. Era had dismissed it as sibling jealousy. Now, she saw it as the clear-eyed truth. Her message was simple: Operation Bonaparte. Are you in? It was a code from their childhood. A reference to Napoleon's escape from Elba. Their shorthand for a plan that was audacious, risky, and had to be executed with military precision. The reply came back in less than 30 seconds. For you. I'd go to war with God. Send me the coordinates. The plan had a name. Now it needed a timeline. Era pulled up Julian's calendar again. In 2 weeks. He was scheduled to fly to their villa in Lake Como for a solo retreat to decompress before the next quarter. The flight record she'd pulled showed a second ticket booked for Sienna Du Bois. They would be together an ocean away. Tangled in sheets that Era's life had paid for. They would be sleeping. And she would be working. For the next 2 weeks. Era played the part of the devoted, glowing, expectant mother. She feigned morning sickness, discussed nursery colors, and smiled lovingly when he touched her stomach. Every smile was a lie. Every touch felt like a spider crawling on her skin. She was a ghost in her own life. Observing, gathering, preparing. She meticulously collected the final pieces of the puzzle, the security protocols for the private banking portals in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. The vocal authentication phrases for his stockbroker. The seed phrases for his various cryptocurrency cold storage wallets. Which she found on a thumb drive hidden in a hollowed-out copy of The Art of War in his office. The irony was so bitter. It was almost sweet. Liam worked on his end. Setting up a series of virtual private networks, VPNs, that would route her digital activity through a dozen countries in a matter of seconds. making her online presence untraceable. He also prepared a clean slate package for her, a new identity. A passport. A driver's license. And a string of bank accounts in a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. He was her digital ghost maker. The night before Julian's flight, he was in a magnanimous mood. He presented her with a gift. It was a velvet box. Inside was a ridiculously large diamond necklace. For the most beautiful mother-to-be in the world. He said. His voice as smooth as silk. Era felt a wave of nausea. And it had nothing to do with her pregnancy. She allowed him to fasten it around her neck. Its weight cold against her skin. It's beautiful. Julian. Thank you. I'll miss you. He whispered. Kissing her forehead. I'll call you every day from Como. I'll be waiting. She replied. Meeting his eyes in the mirror. Her reflection was a stranger woman with a serene smile and eyes as hard as the diamonds at her throat. He would be sleeping beside his mistress. And she would be waiting. Not for his call. But for the moment to burn his kingdom to the ground. The flight to Milan took off at 10:05 p.m. Pacific Time. Era watched its icon crawl across the flight tracker app on her burner phone until it was a tiny speck over the Atlantic. Julian would be settling into his private suite on the upper deck of the A380. Sipping vintage champagne. Sienna would be a few rows back. Perhaps sending him a discreet, thrilling text. The performance had begun. Era's own performance was over. The moment the front door clicked shut behind him. The demure, smiling mask fell away. She walked through the silent, opulent house. Her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. She went to the closet and took off the diamond necklace. She didn't put it back in its velvet box. She let it drop onto the plush carpet, where it lay like a glittering snake. It was a shackle she would no longer wear. Her command center was her sterile white home office. Now transformed. A second monitor, brought in by Liam 2 days prior, sat next to her encrypted laptop. A cooling fan hummed softly. On the desk sat a flask of lukewarm chamomile tea, 3 protein bars, and a high-capacity power bank. This was her war room. The battle would last approximately 8 hours, the window of opportunity between Julian falling asleep on the plane and his bank in Geneva opening for business. She put on a headset and initiated a secure, end-to-end encrypted call to Liam. Stage 1. Are you green? Era's voice was calm, devoid of emotion. Green across the board. Liam's voice crackled back, equally steady. I'm looking at the Croft network infrastructure right now. It's a fortress. Sis. But he left a key under the mat. The smart home integration. She stated. Not asked. The very same. Liam confirmed. He linked everything: security cameras, climate control, the bank-grade server in the basemento, a single IoT hub for convenience. The hub's security is top tier. But the firmware has a tiny vulnerability. I'm in. I have control of the internal network. I can see every packet of data moving in and out of this house. If any silent alarms trip, I'll kill them before they can phone home. You're invisible. Era took a deep breath. Okay. I'm going in. Her strategy was a cascade, designed for maximum speed and impact. She wouldn't just drain one account. She would trigger a simultaneous Multifront financial cataclysm. She had a list. Prioritized by liquidity and security. First target, the Domestic Accounts Bank of America. J.P. Morgan Chase. These were the most visible but held the least amount of his actual wealth. Around $15 million in checking, savings, and money market accounts. This was Julian's operational cash. It was also the most easily traceable. This had to be the final step. The one that would raise the first alarm. She would come back to it. Second target, the brokerage accounts Morgan Stanley. Goldman Sachs. This was the bulk of his liquid net worth outside of his company stock. Hundreds of millions in equities, bonds, and mutual funds. Accessing it required not just a password but a two-factor authentication, 2FA, code sent to Julian's primary phone. His phone was currently at 35,000 feet. Set to airplane mode. Useless to him. But not to her. Liam. I'm initiating the login for the Morgan Stanley portal. I need you to intercept the 2FA. Ready. He said. Era typed in the username and the complex password, Jcroft_loves the game 77. She'd figured it out weeks ago. It was a variation of the password he used for his fantasy football league. His arrogance, again, was her greatest asset. The portal prompted for the 6-digit code. It sent. Go. Got it. Liam said after a tense 4-second pause. The SMS was rerouted to a virtual number. Then to me. I'm seeing the packet. Code is 8-4-2-9-1. Wait. That's only 5 digits. Liam. Say again. You cut out. Sorry. Bad connection. The code is 8-4-4-2-9-1. Era's fingers flew across the keyboard. 844,291. Access granted. She was in. A dizzying array of numbers and stock symbols filled the screen, a portfolio worth over $250 million. Her heart pounded. But her hands were steady. She had rehearsed this in her mind 100 times. She didn't sell everything at once. That would trigger market alerts and trading halts. Instead, she executed a series of carefully calculated block trades. Selling off large positions in highly liquid blue-chip stocks Apple, Microsoft, Google, and converting them to cash. The money appeared in the core settlement account. Now, to move it, she couldn't wire it directly to her new accounts. That was a red flag. This is where the labyrinth of shell corporations came into play. Over the past 3 years, Julian had occasionally used her name to set up small LLCs for investment purposes. They were empty shells. Forgotten entities he'd used to shuffle money around. She had quietly, legally taken full control of 3 of them. From the Morgan Stanley account, she initiated a series of wire transfers, each just under the $1 million mark to avoid triggering enhanced scrutiny. The recipient was not a person, but Vance Holdings, LLC, for consulting services rendered. Then, from Vance Holdings, the money would make another hop to a second shell, and then a third, before finally being wired to its ultimate destination, a newly opened corporate account at a private bank in Liechtenstein under the name Helvetia Strategic Solutions. An entity controlled by one Era Vance. It was a painstaking process. Login. Authenticate. Sell. Wire. Login. Authenticate. Sell. Wire. For 2 solid hours. The only sounds were the clicking of her keyboard and the low hum of the computers. She repeated the process with the Goldman Sachs account. Liam flawlessly intercepting the 2 FA codes each time. The numbers in the Liechtenstein account grew at a staggering rate. Third target, the offshore fortresses Pictet Group. Geneva. Butterfield Bank. Cayman Islands. This was the old money. The truly dark money. Hidden and protected by layers of international law and banking secrecy. This was the hardest part. The security here was biometric. To access the Pictet account, Julian used a vocal authentication system. "You need to give me your best, Julian," Liam said. A hint of gallows humor in his voice. Era had prepared for this. She had hours of recordings of Julian's voice from his podcasts, interviews, keynote speeches, and most usefully, from a recording she'd made of him dictating notes in his office. Using open-source AI software, she had stitched his words together, creating a digital voice print. It was a long shot. She initiated the call to the Pictet private banking hotline. A crisp, Swiss-German voice answered. "Pictet Group. How may I assist you?" "I need to authorize a transfer," Era said. Her voice disguised by a voice-altering software Liam had provided. "Of course. Please state your name and account number for verification." She provided the details. "Thank you, Mr. Croft. And now for vocal authentication. Please state the phrase, 'The mountain air is the clearest.'" This was the moment of truth. Era clicked her mouse. The synthesized voice of her husband, a perfect digital mimicry, spoke from her computer, "The mountain air is the clearest." An agonizing silence followed. Era held her breath. Had she made the vowels too long? Was the cadence off? Verification successful, the banker said, his tone unchanged. "How may we direct your funds, Mr. Croft?" A wave of relief so intense it made her dizzy washed over her. She quickly dictated the instructions. Transferring the entire balance, a shocking €180 million to the same Liechtenstein account. She used a pre-arranged excuse about consolidating assets ahead of a new tech venture. The banker didn't question it. His job was to follow instructions from a verified client. The Cayman Islands account was even more difficult. It required a physical security key, a small USB device that generated a one-time cryptographic signature. Julian kept his on his person at all times except for the spare, which he kept in the back of his office safe. A safe she had learned the combination to by watching him through a strategically placed nanny cam disguised as a smoke detector a month ago. The transfer was made. Another $95 million joined the torrent of cash flowing into her control. Fourth target, the untouchable cryptocurrency. Julian had been an early adopter of crypto. He'd bragged to her once after too much wine that his crypto portfolio was his apocalypse insurance. Completely untraceable and untouchable. He kept the private keys in cold storage on a Ledger Nano X, the very thumb drive she'd found in his copy of The Art of War. This was Liam's territory. He guided her through the process of connecting the ledger, accessing the wallets, and transferring the contents Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a dozen other altcoins to a new, anonymous wallet that only she and Liam knew existed. The value fluctuated by the second, but it was well over $50 million. Final target, the insult. The sun was beginning to cast a faint gray light over the hills outside. It was 6 a.m. The European banks were open. The New York Stock Exchange would open in 2 hours. The window was closing. It was time for the domestic accounts. Era logged into the Bank of America portal. No complex security here. Just a simple password. She looked at their joint checking account. A balance of $786. $452.29. This was their life account mortgages. Staff salaries. Her allowance sheet was all paid from here. She transferred the entire amount. Down to the last cent. To one of her shell companies. Then. She paused. With a grim smile. She initiated one final transfer into the account, a deposit for $100. She did the same for his personal checking account at Chase, emptied it completely and deposited a single dollar. Enough for a cup of coffee or a bus ticket. It was over. She leaned back in her chair. Her body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. She looked at the final tally on a spreadsheet she'd kept open. She had systematically liquidated and transferred just over $500 million. Liam. She whispered into the headset. Her voice raw. It's done. Phase 1 is complete. Jesus. Era. He breathed. I'm looking at the logs. It's a thing of beauty. A digital guillotine. You didn't just rob him. You completely erased his financial identity. Phase 2. She said. Already moving. Her mind focused on the next step. The data. Julian's server in the basement didn't just run the house. It contained his life. Every email. Every document. Every contract. And most importantly, a hidden, encrypted partition labeled contingency. She discovered it during her nightly explorations. Liam had already broken the encryption. It was Julian's blackmail folder dirt on business rivals, politicians, and even his own board members. It was his ultimate leverage. And now, it was hers. I'm initiating the download to the secure cloud server. Liam said. It's 800 gigs. It'll take about 20 minutes. After it's done, I'll wipe the source drive. I mean, really wipe it. Department of Defense level scrub. There won't be a single byte left. While the data transferred, Era moved through the house. She took nothing of value. Not the jewelry. Not the art. Not the clothes. She packed a single suitcase with practical items, the burner phones, her new passport and the crypto ledger. The few things she owned before Julian. And the tools of her new life. She walked into their bedroom. The indentation of his head was still on the pillow next to hers. She felt nothing. She went into the bathroom and took out the pregnancy test that had started it all. The one she'd saved with its 2 triumphant pink lines. She placed it squarely on his pillow. Her phone buzzed. It was Liam. Download complete. Wiping the drive now. You need to go. Era. Get out of there. The digital trail is gone. Now the physical one has to disappear. 2. She walked down the grand staircase for the last time. In the foyer. She paused and looked at a large framed portrait of her and Julian on their wedding day. They looked so happy. So full of hope. It was all a lie. She took the single house key from her purse. placed it on a marble table beneath the portrait, and walked out the front door, not bothering to lock it behind her. An untraceable car service she had booked was waiting for her at the bottom of the long, winding driveway. The sun was rising. It was the first day of her new life, and the last day of Julian Croft's. He just didn't know it yet. Julian Croft woke up to the gentle rocking of the descent into Milan and the syrupy voice of a flight attendant offering him a hot towel. He felt magnificent. The 8-hour flight had been a blissful, dreamless void. He'd spent the first 2 hours texting Sienna, building the anticipation for their week together, before sliding into a deep, untroubled sleep. He was a master of the universe, flying toward his mistress in his private sky throne. His perfect life and pregnant wife waiting patiently for him back home. He deplaned, breezed through a private customs channel, and found Sienna waiting for him just beyond the gate. She was stunning, wearing a white linen dress that clung to her in the humid Italian air. He kissed her deeply. A public display of ownership. "I missed you," she murmured against his lips. "The wait is over," he said, taking her hand and leading her toward the waiting black Mercedes that would spirit them away to Lake Como. The first sign of trouble was innocuous. As they settled into the plush leather seats for the hour-long drive, Julian took out his Amex Centurion card to pay the private handler who had expedited their arrival. "My apologies, Mr. Croft," the man said with a slight bow, handing the card back. "It has been declined." Julian stared at the man, then at the card. Declined? That was impossible. It was a card with, for all practical purposes, no limit. He must have misswiped it. "Run it again," he commanded, his voice sharp with annoyance. The man did. The result was the same. A flicker of irritation crossed Julian's face. He handed the man a different card. A J.P. Morgan Reserve card. Declined. Sienna watched, her brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right, darling?" "It's nothing," Julian snapped, his face flushing. He pulled a thick roll of euros from his travel wallet and peeled off several €100 notes, thrusting them at the handler. "A network issue with the American banks. It happens." But a cold seed of unease had been planted throughout the scenic drive. As the majestic Alps rose around them, Julian was uncharacteristically silent. He kept checking his phone, trying to access his banking apps. Each one met with a new, baffling error message: invalid credentials. Please contact customer support. He tried to reset a password. The request for a confirmation code went to his email. When he tried to log into his email, that too was blocked. Unusual activity has been detected on your account. Access has been suspended. By the time they arrived at the grand waterfront villa in Como, Julian's mood had soured completely. The majestic view of the shimmering lake and the charming village of Bellagio across the water did nothing to soothe him. He left Sienna to direct the staff with the luggage and retreated to the study, slamming the door behind him. He needed to call his private banker at Morgan Stanley. He dialed the number from memory. "Mr. Croft," said his longtime banker, David Chen. "Good morning. Or I suppose good afternoon for you." Well, I was expecting your call." "David. What the hell is going on?" Julian barked. None of my cards are working. I'm locked out of everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When David spoke again, his voice was strained. Formal. Julian. According to our records, you initiated a full liquidation of your portfolio starting at approximately 11 p.m. Pacific time last night. All assets were converted to cash and wired out. Julian felt the blood drain from his face. What? That's insane. I was on a plane. I didn't authorize anything. We have the logs, David said, his voice now cold and professional. The login was successful. The two-factor authentication codes were all verified. The wire transfers were made to a holding company. It was all done under your credentials. As of 3:45 a.m. This morning. Your account balance with us is 0. 0. Julian whispered the word. It felt alien in his mouth. The same activity was reported at Goldman. David added, his voice low. And I received automated alerts from the correspondent banks in Geneva and the Caymans. Your accounts there have been emptied. Julian. Someone has systematically dismantled your entire liquid financial profile in under 8 hours. We've flagged it as a potential high-level breach. But the digital footprint is a ghost. It's routed through half the world and disappears in Liechtenstein. The authorities have been notified. Julian's phone slipped from his numb fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. He sank into a leather chair, his mind reeling. This wasn't a hack. A random hacker would have been messy. Would have tripped alarms. This was precise. This was surgical. This was personal. And then a thought. So monstrous and unbelievable it almost made him laugh. Era. No. Impossible. Sweet. Docile Era. The woman who couldn't even balance a checkbook. Who thought a stock option was a menu item. She couldn't have done this. She wouldn't have the first clue. He snatched up the phone and dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He called the house landline. It rang and rang. Unanswered in the vast, empty mansion. Panic. A sensation Julian hadn't felt since he was a teenager. Began to claw at his throat. He called Marcus Thorne. His lawyer. Marcus. He yelled when the man answered. It's gone. Everything. The money is gone. Julian. Calm down and tell me what happened. Marcus's voice was a splash of ice water. Julian explained the situation in frantic, clipped sentences, the declined cards, the locked accounts, the call with David Chen. When he finished, there was a long silence on the line. It's her. Marcus. Julian breathed. It has to be her. Your wife. Marcus sounded skeptical. Julian. With all due respect. She plans charity galas. Not financial coups. You don't know her. Julian shouted, pacing the room like a caged animal. There was a life before me. She worked in finance. Forensic accounting. I thought it was a cute little hobby. Forensic accounting. Marcus repeated slowly. The gravity of the words sinking in. Oh my God. Julian. Stay where you are. I'm getting on the first flight to San Francisco Airport. I'll go to the house. Find out what's happened. Don't talk to anyone. The wait was torture. Sienna tried to talk to him. To soothe him. But he waved her away with a snarl. She retreated. Her face pale with fear and confusion. Leaving him alone with his spiraling thoughts. Hours later. Marcus called back. His voice was grim. I'm at the house. Julian. The police are here. I told them you suspected a break-in. And? Julian demanded. There's no sign of forced entry. But she's gone. Her clothes are here. Her jewelry. Everything except a single suitcase. The staff hasn't seen her since you left. What did you find? Marcus cleared his throat. In your office. The safe is open. It's empty. And in the bedroom. Julian. She left something for you on your pillow. What was it? A pregnancy test. The positive one. Julian let out a strangled cry. It was a message. She wasn't just taking the money. She was taking his son. His heir. And the server in the basement. Marcus continued. His voice dropping lower. It's been wiped. Professionally. There's nothing left. Julian. Whatever was on there is gone. Or rather. Someone else has it now. The blackmail files. His leverage. His power. Gone. Julian Croft. The millionaire tech mogul. The master of the universe. Was standing in a borrowed villa in Italy with no access to money. His empire hollowed out. His darkest secrets in the hands of his pregnant. Runaway wife. He wasn't a king anymore. He was just a man in a castle of ash. Find her. Julian whispered. His voice a venomous hiss. I don't care what it costs. Use every resource. Every every contact we have. I want her found. Marcus. I want my son. And I want her to pay for this. Find Era Vance. The hunt had begun. But Era was no longer Era Croft. Or even Era Vance. Thousands of miles away. A woman named Anna Muller stepped off a train in a sleepy, picturesque town nestled in the Austrian Alps. She wore simple clothes. Her hair was cut shorter and dyed a mousy brown. She carried a single suitcase and a backpack. She was visibly pregnant and looked like any other European woman seeking quiet and fresh mountain air. She checked into a modest, clean guesthouse she had booked months in advance, paying for 3 months up front in cash. The room had a small balcony that overlooked a valley of breathtaking beauty. That evening, she sat on the balcony, wrapped in a warm blanket, sipping herbal tea. She logged onto her new laptop, connecting to the internet via a secure, anonymous satellite link Liam had arranged. She opened a single file, a live feed of the financial markets. She watched as the first reports began to surface on niche financial blogs. Unusual trading activity detected in Croft Technologies linked accounts. Rumors of a massive, coordinated breach against CEO Julian Croft. A small, grim smile touched Anna Muller's lips. The world was beginning to notice. But they were looking for a hacker. A shadowy syndicate. They would never think to look for a pregnant woman in a tiny Austrian village. She placed a hand on her belly, where she felt a faint, fluttering kick. We're safe now, little one, she whispered to her unborn son. Her voice carried away by the clean, cold mountain wind. We're free. But she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that it was only a matter of time before Julian's rage found its way across the ocean. This was just the end of the beginning. The following weeks were a study in contrasts. For Julian Croft, they were a descent into a special kind of hell. One reserved for the powerful who suddenly find themselves powerless. For Era, now living and breathing as Anna Muller, they were a quiet, nerve-wracking renaissance. Julian's life imploded with spectacular speed. The news of his financial wipeout could not be contained. It bled from niche financial blogs into the mainstream press. Tech titan Julian Croft victim of unprecedented cyber heist, screamed one headline. Croft's fortune vanishes overnight, cried another. His company's board of directors, already jittery about the upcoming IPO, went into panic mode. The IPO was indefinitely postponed. His reputation, once his most valuable asset, was now toxic. He was a prisoner in his own mansion. He couldn't pay his staff, who quickly departed. He couldn't pay the legion of landscapers, pool cleaners, and security guards. The grand house began to feel less like a palace and more like a mausoleum, gathering dust. He lived on takeout food paid for by Marcus Thorne's corporate card. A daily humiliation that gnawed at him. His rage was a living entity. He and Marcus turned the mansion's dining room into a war room. A massive whiteboard was installed, covered in maps, timelines, and potential leads. They hired the best private investigators money could buy, or rather, that Marcus's firm could front him. They scoured flight manifests, border crossings, and financial transaction records. But they found nothing. Era had vanished as if she'd never existed. There was no record of an Era Croft or Era Vance leaving the country. Her credit cards were untouched. Her bank accounts were dormant. She had become a ghost. The only clue was Liam. They knew he was her brother. They knew his skill set. Julian's investigators descended on Liam's life. But he was just as clean. He'd wiped his own digital tracks with the same professional precision. When investigators showed up at his apartment, he was calm, cooperative, and expressed deep, convincing concern for his missing sister, whom he claimed to believe had been abducted by the same people who stole Julian's money. He was an unshakable wall of plausible deniability. She's smarter than we thought, Marcus conceded one evening, staring at the blank whiteboard. She didn't just run. She executed a pre-planned exfiltration. She had help. Professional help. It was her brother. Julian hissed, slamming his fist on the table. I know it was. Knowing it and proving it are two different worlds, Julian. And even if we could prove it, he's not the one with your $500 million. Julian's only hope, his only focus, was Sienna. He interrogated her relentlessly, replaying every conversation she'd ever had with Era. Every chance encounter. Sienna, terrified and trapped, racked her brain. She was always so quiet, so polite. Sienna sobbed during one of their sessions. We barely spoke. She talked about the baby, about wanting to raise him somewhere with fresh air, away from the city. Fresh air. The whole world has fresh air. Julian roared. No. Wait. Sienna said, her eyes widening. There was one thing. A long time ago. At a charity auction. She was looking at a painting. A landscape. She had this wistful look on her face. I asked her about it. She said it reminded her of a place her grandmother used to take her as a girl. A place she said was the most peaceful on earth. Julian leaned forward. His eyes boring into her. What place? Sienna. What was the name of the place? Hallstatt. Sienna whispered. She said it was a tiny village on a lake in Austria. It was a sliver. A ghost of a memory. But it was more than they'd had in a month. Marcus immediately dispatched a team of his best investigators discreet. European-based operative Esto the Salzkammergut region of Austria. Their instructions were simple: don't look for Era Croft. Look for a pregnant, single American woman who arrived about a month ago. Blend in. Watch. Wait. Meanwhile. In Hallstatt. Era, as Anna Muller, had settled into a rhythm. Her life was simple. Monastic. She woke early. Took long, slow walks along the edge of the crystal-clear lake. Bought fresh bread and cheese from the local market. And spent her afternoons reading books on motherhood and child development. The town, with its charming 16th-century houses clinging to the mountainside, was a balm to her soul. For the first time in years, she felt the silence not as an oppressive void, but as genuine peace. She kept track of Julian's downfall through the news. She felt a grim satisfaction, but no joy. Her goal had not been to revel in his destruction, but to secure her and her son's survival. She also had a second, more powerful insurance policy: the blackmail files. Liam had helped her set up a dead man's switch. A secure server was loaded with the most damning of Julian's files, curated into neat folders labeled with the names of board members, politicians, and business rivals. If Era failed to log in and reset a countdown timer every 72 hours, the server would automatically email the contents of those folders to the people involved, as well as to a list of major international news outlets. It was a weapon of mutually assured destruction. As long as she was safe, Julian's secrets were safe. If she disappeared, so did his world. The first sign that her peace was about to be shattered came in the form of a man in a tweed jacket. She saw him at the local cafe, reading a German newspaper but holding it like a man who didn't speak the language. She saw him again the next day near the funicular railway, ostensibly taking pictures, but with his lens pointed more often toward the town square than the mountain view. He didn't look like a tourist. He looked like a hunter. Her blood ran cold. She went back to her guest house, her heart pounding, and immediately called Liam on their secure line. "They're here," she said, her voice tight with fear. "I've spotted one. There may be more. Okay. Stay calm." Liam's voice was a steadying presence. "The plan is in place. Are you ready to move to phase 3? "I'm ready," she said, her hand instinctively going to her now very prominent belly. "Good. The Swiss package is waiting for you. Go now. Don't take anything that connects you to Anna Muller. I'll wipe your digital trail here. Anna Muller will cease to exist within the hour. Be safe. Sis." Era hung up. She took a deep breath. Steeling herself. The quiet interlude was over. The war was entering a new phase. She left the guesthouse with nothing but a small purse. She walked calmly to the train station. But instead of buying a ticket, she went into the restroom. 5 minutes later, a different woman walked out. The mousy brown wig was gone, replaced by a chic black bob. Simple glasses framed her eyes, and a stylish maternity coat replaced the plain one she'd been wearing. She now looked less like a German Hausfrau and more like a wealthy Parisian on holiday. She bypassed the train and went to the local car rental agency. A pre-booked reservation under her third identity, Chloe Dubois. She drove not east toward Vienna, but west, toward the Swiss border. As she drove, a black Audi fell in behind her. It was the man in the tweed jacket. They had found her. They were following her. But this was part of the plan. She wasn't running from them. She was leading them. She drove for 2 hours into the heart of the Alps, the roads becoming more treacherous and winding. She was heading for a specific location Liam had chosen, the Grossglockner High Alpine Road. A famous scenic route that was notoriously dangerous and filled with hairpin turns. As she ascended, the weather turned. The sky darkening and a cold sleep beginning to fall. The black Audi stayed glued to her bumper. They were getting bolder, wanting to corner her. She reached the designated spot, a sharp, blind curve with a steep drop-off on one side. On the other side of the curve, hidden from view, a delivery truck was parked. Its driver waiting. The driver was one of Liam's contacts, a former Special Forces soldier from Germany. Era took a deep breath and floored it. She took the curve at a dangerously high speed. The Audi behind her sped up to keep pace. As Era rounded the bend, she slammed on her brakes, her car skidding to a halt just behind the parked truck. The Audi, coming around the corner too fast on the slick road, had two choices: plow into the back of the delivery truck or swerve. The driver instinctively swerved. The car's tires screamed as they lost traction on the icy asphalt. For a heart-stopping moment, the Audi teetered on the edge of the road before plunging over the side, tumbling down the rocky embankment in a shower of sparks and shattered glass. Era didn't wait to see the outcome. The back of the delivery truck opened. Her car was driven inside, and the ramp closed. 10 minutes later, the truck drove away, passing the emergency vehicles that were just beginning to arrive at the scene of the tragic accident. Inside the dark, swaying truck, Era's new life began. 2 days later, a healthy baby boy was born in a private, discreet clinic in Zurich. She named him Leo. The news reached Julian a week later. His investigators had been pulled from the wreckage, seriously injured but alive. They had lost her. The trail was ice cold. He had failed. He had lost. He sat in his dark, dusty mansion, a broken man. The last of his money, borrowed from Marcus, was gone. And then he received an email. It contained no text, just a single attachment. It was a photo. A crystal-clear image of a newborn baby wrapped in a blue blanket, sleeping peacefully. Beneath it was a PDF document. It was a draft of a divorce settlement. The terms were simple. She would keep a fraction of the money, $50 million, placed in a trust for their son, Leo. The rest, over $450 million, would be returned to him. In exchange, he would sign the divorce papers, relinquish all parental rights, and agree to never, under any circumstances, attempt to contact her or their child ever again. The document also contained a link to a password-protected website. The password was Sienna. When he logged in, he saw the neat folders of his blackmail files. The message was clear: refuse the deal, and his destruction would be absolute and public. It was a checkmate. She hadn't just beaten him. She had shown him mercy. But it was a cruel mercy. A mercy that left him alive but utterly neutered. A king of a diminished and tarnished kingdom. She had left him with the one thing she knew he now cared about more than money, his reputation and his company. With a shaking hand, Julian Croft picked up the phone and called his lawyer. "Marcus," he said, his voice hollow. "She's won. Get me the papers. I'll sign." Years later, in a sun-drenched villa on the coast of Portugal, a woman watches a small boy with dark, curly hair chase a soccer ball across a lush green lawn. The sound of his laughter, bright and carefree, is the only thing that fills the air. Era, now known to her small circle of friends as Lena, smiles. A genuine, peaceful smile that reaches her eyes. The ghost of Anna Muller is long gone, and the memory of Era Croft is a lifetime away. She has her life back. She has her son. She has won her war. Not with a final, fiery explosion, but with the quiet, unshakable strength of a life well lived. The ghost had not just outsmarted the hunter. She had redefined the very nature of victory, finding it not in his ruin, but in her and her son's freedom. It was the ultimate power and the ultimate revenge, a life of happiness he could never touch. Era's story is a masterclass in strategy, courage, and the fierce, unyielding power of a mother's love. She didn't just get even. She reset the board and rewrote the rules of the game. From the brink of total devastation, she built a fortress to protect her child and secured their freedom. It's a gripping reminder that the quietest people often have the most resilient minds and the strongest wills. What would you have done in her position? Was her response justified? Or did she go too far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story of strength and cunning resonated with you, and you want to hear more tales of intricate dramas where the stakes are high and the outcomes are never certain, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who appreciates a story of epic revenge. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.